Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2020 Business Transformation and Operational Excellence World Summit, BTOES, from home, where great leaders and smart technologies meet key business processes, people, and culture. My name is José Pires, and I'm the CEO of Business Excellence and Innovation, and I'm honored to be your host for the summit. To paraphrase John Lennon, we had plans, but life happened. 2020 has been filled with unique challenges, but out of disruption, new opportunities emerge. And BTOES from home is an amazing opportunity to learn and share how operational excellence, innovation, technology, culture, business, and digital transformations are reshaping the way we work and live. But first, let's cover some of the exciting things that are happening around this unique live event. Make sure to download and use the BTOES from home desktop and mobile apps to select and attend your sessions, to connect and network with other participants. And we also ask that you give us feedback by rating the speakers and their content in the event app, which is fantastic. Part of the event app, you have the opportunity to visit the virtual booths and start scheduling meetings to win amazing giveaways. If you schedule and attend 5 meetings with any 5 of the virtual booths using the super easy online appointment scheduling tool, you get access to the recording of the Disney Innovation and Leadership full day workshop, which is priced live at about $1,000 US. Also, we have asked all virtual booths to offer their own giveaways and prizes for attendees that schedule and attend meetings in the virtual booths. So here at the main stage, we'll have 3 types of sessions: keynote presentations by leading industry experts, live panel sessions with a combination of cross-industry leaders and experts, and special ceremonies and workshops will all take place here at the main stage. But there is a whole lot more going on around this conference. Several tracks and special events that you must check out, including a network happy hour with breakouts at 3:45 p.m. Eastern Time today, and the Industry Awards ceremony at 3:45 p.m. tomorrow, followed by the limited attendance awards after party. In the awards after party, you're going to get to hang out with all the award finalists and winners. Now, each keynote presentation here on the main stage will last 35 minutes, followed by a 10-minute Q&A. It's very important that you submit your questions during the presentations via the BTOES from Home app. Click the specific session on the app and you see a call out for chat, questions, and polls. During each presentation, I'll keep an eye on the questions being submitted and I'll relay them back to the speaker or panel during the live Q&A. This is your opportunity to make these insights valuable to your own context. So don't be shy and ask about what matters most to you. Now, I want to make sure that you feel comfortable asking questions and understanding how the process works. So very quickly, I ask you that you click on the session that we have right now and you hover to the call out box that will give you options for chat, questions, and polls. So do me a favor, go into that area, click on the questions icon in that area and submit a question stating where are you coming from today, what city and country you're logging on today. We have thousands of participants on a global scale, and it's very exciting to have such a diverse team of business transformation and operational excellence leaders logging in and creating this unique environment where great ideas and great people can connect. So I already see Laura Martin Samala. You win the prize, Laura, for the first one to come through. And very, very cool. And Laura is actually asking a question. And Laura, yes, we'll be recording the sessions for you. And it's awesome that I can see the connection with the audience right now. So let me sample some of the people who are coming through here. I have Kim from Belgium. Hello, Kim. Great to have you here. Sandra from Framingham, Massachusetts. Randy from Miami, Florida. We have Anna Martinez from Connecticut in the United States. We have Sandra from Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. We have Dawn Miller logging in from Raleigh, North Carolina. We have Maria from Boston, Massachusetts, Erin from Seattle, and we have Adam from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We have Akhil from Pune in India. Akhil, great to have you there logging in directly from Pune. We have Kirsten from Chicago, and we have a wonderful community around the United States and around the world who are logging on directly for BTOES from home. So very, very excited to have you here. So let me tell you that this questions connection is the way that you communicate with us. When the sessions start, as you come up with questions, as the presenter, is making his or her, presentation, type your questions, and there is a feature in this questions box that actually allows you to rank someone else's question as well. And some of the higher ranked questions go to the top, but I'm going to be scanning through all of them through the presentation, and I'm going to relay several of these questions during the 10-minute live Q&A that we're going to have at the very end. So take advantage of this feature. It's really fantastic that you can ask questions that are important to your context. And it doesn't matter if you're a novice or if you're a very experienced business transformation, operational excellence leader. All your questions matter, and we're going to try to get to as many questions as possible during the Q&A. And even if we're not able to cover all questions during the Q&A, we may be able to relay some of these questions to the speakers, and a lot of our communication post-event will certainly take into account the type of questions that you're asking throughout the event. Now, imagine that we have sessions not only going on here at the main stage, but we have all of the sessions happening in parallel and in the different tracks, and this functionality is available for all of them. Make sure that you reach out to the virtual booths and get your prizes and make those meetings with in the virtual booths. Make sure that you connect with each other, because the ecosystem that's created by the app in this online event is unique, and you have access to the bios of everyone you're connecting with. You get to know where they're working, where they work, what they do, what their career history looks like, and these are very meaningful connections that I hope that you can take full advantage of by using the features that are available in this very unique app and really online ecosystem. Remember, the best way to accelerate excellence and innovation is to create environments where great people and great ideas can connect. And this is what BTOES from home is all about. We may be socially distant, but we are very much connected with a common purpose of accelerating business transformations, operational excellence, and creating value for organizations and communities that we work for and live in. Now, let's take a look at some of the other things that are happening today. We're going to start the day with Brou Gautier on a keynote on culture transformation to build an improvement and innovation ecosystem. I'll introduce Brou at the top of the hour, and it's a fantastic presentation about the transformation that's taking place in the United States Air Force. And Brou is a unique leader who is leading this incredible change in the way that the Air Force operates, in the way that it tackles some of the challenges and opportunities. Now, after that, here at the main stage, we will have a keynote panel on the future of work. And we're going to have fantastic speakers for that. We have Anu George from Morningstar Financials. We have Yuval Devere from Google. And we have Desalegn Wood from Thought Exchange discussing the future of work and what is the impact of COVID-19 in the development of the new normal in our society. Now, after that session at Eastern Time, all these times that I'm talking here are Eastern Time, at noon Eastern Time, we're going to have a keynote directly from Stockholm, Sweden. And we're going to have one of the best speakers when it comes to innovation not from a theoretical standpoint, but a very practical application of innovation in business and society. And I'm very, very glad to have Magnus Penker, who is the CEO of Innovation 360, from Sweden to the world, discussing about how we play bold and how to win the business game by using creative destruction. So fantastic session with Magnus Penker that you do not want to miss. At 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll have another keynote panel here at the main stage. We're going to discuss robotics process automation and intelligent automation and the impact of COVID-19 and what the future holds for people and technology in this new settings that we are living on. Some organizations had been prior to COVID on a digital transformation journey for about 5 years, and things had moved very, very slow. And then we had a pandemic, and in about 5 days, we did what we couldn't really accomplish in 5 years. So technology clearly has accelerated during this time, and we're going to have awesome experts discussing the technology side, the business side, the social side of this technology acceleration. So we'll have Rajiv Jain from Hewlett Packard as one of our keynote panelists, Brandon Knott, who is the Senior Vice President at UiPath, dedicated to robotics process automation, and Mark Chimura, who leads robotics process automation implementations at Morningstar Financial. So terrific panel as well. You do not want to miss that. Now, later on in the day, we're going to have the closing remarks and right soon after that one keynote panel. And then we're going to follow that up at 3:45 p.m. again with the networking happy hour. So by that time, if you drink, get a glass of wine, sit in front of your computer, and network with some of the best in the industry. So we're going to have breakout rooms where you can meet people, say hello, introduce yourself, have a discussion about specific topics that we're going to launch during the networking happy hour. So that event is going to kick off at 3:45 p.m. Now, I want to say again, explore the full functionality of the app. You have a desktop version, you have a mobile version, and both versions are fantastic. Connect with people, visit the virtual booths. You can get a 1,000 prize giveaway by just having 5 meetings, separate meetings in the virtual booths. And then, of course, the virtual booth operators are going to be providing these special gifts that they are unique for their presentations and their organizations. So this is a way for you not only to be eligible for the 1,000 prize giveaway, but also very many special gifts and giveaways that they're going to have as part of that. So this is the beginning of a 3-day journey here, where we're going to connect with each other. We're going to learn from tremendous experts from all over the world in the best organizations who are really creating the future today for all of us. And we want to be part of that journey. We want to know what it takes to create the future today, and we want to engage intentionally in that journey with some of the best in the world. And the best way to do that is to connect with each other, is to connect with these thought leaders, is to connect with the organizations and technology companies that are advancing the way we work and live, and truly reshaping the way we work and live. Now, tomorrow, I want to highlight again, we have an incredible event with the industry awards finalists and winners. So you do not want to miss the industry awards tomorrow, because you're going to get to see the best of the best. And this is, despite all the troubles that have happened in 2020, it's amazing to see what organizations are doing around the world to accelerate excellence, to accelerate innovation, to accelerate culture, business, and digital transformations that create social and financial value. So this is very excited about that event that's going to take place tomorrow. Now, without further ado, let's welcome our first keynote speaker. and very excited to bring a leader in the Air Force, Mr. Brou Gautier. Mr. Brou Gautier serves as the director of the Air Force's Spark Tank event and leads the Continuous Process Improvement and Innovation Division at the Department of the Air Force headquarters in Washington, D.C. As the Air Force's Continuous Process Improvement and Innovation lead, Brou is responsible for the development, training, and deployment of CPI and innovation concepts across the department in a way that fosters innovation, solves performance issues, and transforms the culture with a particular emphasis on end-to-end processes. Prior to his current role, Mr. Gautier was a commissioned officer and pilot in the U.S. Air Force and a consultant and business director for a privately held Lean Six Sigma company. Brou, it's always an honor to have you with us. Tremendous depth of experience and practical insights. Thank you so much for sharing that wisdom with us today.
Jose, thank you for having me headline up this morning's event to help kind of kick things off. It's an incredible honor, and I'm quite humbled to be at the lead of a 3-day organizational event with worldwide impact, potentially, as we going to share this knowledge and help, all designed to help each other in the struggle to get to this operational excellence goal, right? And I'm just honored that the BTOES team reached out and asked because I think we have a compelling story to share with you today. And Jose, I appreciate your kind words.
Look forward to it.
Okay, thank you very much. And I appreciate also being here on the stage with such great company. You know, all the folks that you mentioned, it got me thinking about, you know, today's current mentors and how they're fresh in the space, and how I actually lean back to previous mentors that I've had, Don Linseman, Ron Ritter, Mike Smith, Paul Dunbar, lots of names that were important to me in my journey. And I know that you all have a great slate of them who will be important to you in your journey today. And again, I'm honored to be able to contribute to that this morning. So should we get right into the slides? Perfect. Thank you very much. I just wanted to share, you know, whenever we present for the government or the department, we have to put this little disclaimer out here that while the presentation is a combination of my take on things, of the reality of our deployment in the Air Force towards reaching operational excellence, it does represent some of my opinion in there as well, and doesn't reflect an official position of the Air Force. But what I wanted to share with you is essentially the observations that I've had coming from the kind of the hot seat, if you will, to kind of observe where our culture is today, where it's been over the last decade or so, and then help shape that for the future. So with that, I intend to share with you that our primary goal is, you know, how can we make the most of our set funding while lowering risk and cost? And I think that's a shared goal amongst all of us. And I know for especially taxpayers in the US, you really appreciate that notion. And I would just say too that every one of the 685,000 airmen and space professionals that I come across absolutely have that in mind, because we're taxpayers too. And we know that while we've got a sacred honor to offer up to the United States for defense of the nation, our obligation is also to our taxpayers to make sure we do that without kind of breaking the bank, if you will. So with that in mind, we'll kind of keep going through and just say, we're looking at performance excellence and thinking about all those kinds of things. What does that mean, right? What is performance excellence in terms of productivity and optimization, all those key business buzzwords? What does that really mean for folks? At the end of the day, yes, we'll be eliminating waste. Yes, we're trying to increase capacity. Yes, we want to increase productivity. It's all tied to output. But at the end of the day, one of the things that's absolutely essential to learn is that it's about behaviors, right? At the end of the day, we're humans, and we're doing a service, we're performing a function, and we have to absolutely be rock solid in our commitment to what we're doing for our job and in our case, for the nation. So I've got down there at the bottom something called our core values. And I'll just say that I was given this little pamphlet back in 1997. This was January 1997. And there were a couple of reasons why this pamphlet came into existence, but I'm going to focus on that last one there. Integrity first, obviously, service before self, a little bit of patriotism embedded in doing that it's about the needs of the nation and the needs of the Air Force. But that excellence in all we do is one that actually gets a little bit of folks in trouble. People tend to think that, you get wrapped up in this concept of perfection. We're always reaching for perfection, right? But some people get frustrated with perfection's not attainable. So where do we go from there? And I would just say that the actual definition of excellence in all we do is that it directs us to develop a sustained passion for continuous improvement and innovation. And that will propel the Air Force into a long-term upward spiral of accomplishment and performance. So 1997, these guys I think they had it right. And so the rest of this presentation will be about essentially that journey from 1997 for me and our observations for the Air Force and how we're reaching to try to get after that performance excellence standard. So to set the stage a little bit, beyond just where we're going with the briefing, I want to talk a little bit about what most people think the Air Force is, right? I think these pictures kind of summarize and capture a little bit about what you perhaps believe the Air Force. When somebody says United States Air Force, what are you thinking about? In many cases, it's really, really cool technology. It's airplanes, it's flying, it's rocketry, it's space, it's awesomeness, right? But in reality, I think it's far bigger than that, right? Because I want you to think for a second that those are actually our effects. That's the product that and the services that we deliver. That's not necessarily all that it takes that the Air Force is composed of. So I have to actually spend a lot of time reminding folks that, this is about the organization that produces those effects, right? And so let's dive into that just a little bit. So I've got a little picture of a globe here. And I know most of you think globally. We've got, certainly Jose introduced a number of folks who were all around the world dialing into the conference, the symposium here. And what's interesting for me is that we have this global organization for the Air Force. We have a worldwide footprint. And one of the things that I think that people fundamentally don't necessarily take, you can appreciate small and local and tangible, but we have a global footprint. So we have essentially 89 cities that is comprised of the active duty Air Force. We have a number of reserve cities. We have a number of Air National Guard cities, and we have some expeditionary temporary cities all over the planet. Some told about 200 different operating locations worldwide, and our force is about 685,000 people strong. That's both full-time and part-time employees. Those people have about 160 different skill sets. And that's an amazing thing when you start thinking about it, because ultimately I said we produce that service, but we also maintain 200 cities around the world that have in them regional, local, national, international airports, and even intergalactic spaceports, right? So what happens is most of those 685,000 people, they're about taking care of and building and the stewardship of the cities and the ports from which we launch our capabilities. And that's an amazing requirement, because in that set of skills and that global footprint, we have folks who do lots of different things. We have firefighters, we have medical technicians and nurses, we have journalists, we have police, we have engineers, electricians, fitness coaches, we have cooks, human resources specialists, docs, nurses, maintainers, you name it. It's across the 160 different specialties. I've got a picture of a dog in the upper left corner, and that's not contrary to popular speaking opinions, because somebody said if you have a dog in your presentation, everyone will really, really like it. That's actually because the Air Force is the Department of Defense and the federal government, the U.S. federal government enterprise executive agent for working dogs, bomb detection dogs, drug detection dogs, security assistance dogs, etc. So when you thought Air Force, you didn't think veterinarians, did you? You didn't think dog handlers. You didn't think those kinds of things. But in reality, our enterprise is that big that we have to care for and feed all of that. And why is the Air Force the federal government's executive agent for working dogs? Because we're that good at it. It made sense. We're economical at it, and we produce a great service for our folks. So when you start thinking about the Air Force, you think about those effects. I want you to actually then start thinking about what's going on behind the scenes to enable all of those effects to occur. And so when we start talking about and thinking about those folks, I have to have this message for them. I want to achieve the maximum productivity from every taxpayer dollar, and I want to minimize no value added burden. And why do I talk about that? Ultimately, that's because when I look at those 685,000 folks and I talk with them, I'm listening for the things that are important to them. And they have lots of concerns. They have issues at home. They have personal finance issues. They've got planning issues. They want adventure. They want to go see the world. They've got children that they need to take care of. And so they all have a whole bunch of different concerns. Plus, on top of that, they loan some of our time to our Air Force to help make us even better. And so the key is, how do I tap into those previous goals that I mentioned, and I start thinking about these folks and thinking about the what's in it for them, and how do I get them to appreciate and adopt my concerns for resource productivity and minimizing waste towards something that's important for them. And again, I think that comes down to behaviors. So some people, really kind of, this is a very positive image and I love it. But some people, when I hear, when I say, hey, let's talk about productivity, they're like, oh no, the cynical who have been victims of, and I say that word intentionally, of total quality management and management by objectives and zero defects. All of those programs in the past believe that they have the right to be cynical about some of these things because those programs were failed in their implementations, right? I think we've learned a lot from those days. And in essence, we're not trying to do all of these things. It's not simply about tools. It's really about a holistic system of continuous improvement and innovation that helps people thrive where they are locally and then magnify for global effect, right? So that's the issue. Productivity of every asset at doing what you need it to do. So one of the things when we talk about showing respect for people, which is, I think, a lot different than in the past, I want to pause for just a second and say, back in total quality management, one of my first experiences with the Air Force, we had general officers who read the books and said, Airman, you are empowered to go do what's right and do this quality thing, right? And so we didn't catch the clues that they were like this quality thing. What we zeroed on was we were empowered to go make a difference and change, and we got metrics. And man, we measured everything. We measured stuff that was irrelevant. We started collecting data. We collected scads of data. We started setting up metrics and goals that had nothing to do with outcomes, but everything to do with other stuff, which was really weird, and it confused people. The other thing that happened is general officer said, I want to hear from you. And airmen started talking. And what they found when airmen started talking was that generals didn't necessarily care back then. Why? Well, because airmen are thinking about problems. They think deeply about problems, very filled with personal pride, pride of authorship, pride of ownership of the work they do. And they're saying, this doesn't work. It's not right. It doesn't do these things. But they didn't know how to communicate that. Right? So back then we're showing, a general comes into the base and we're showing them all these issues, and the general's having a real struggle. He can appreciate that it's a very tactical knowledge, but the general's thinking about 200 bases worldwide. He's about producing global effects. And he got brought down to the very, very, from the 50,000 foot level down to the 100-foot level and said, wait, I'm having a real big difficulty with all this stuff in the middle. So we couldn't communicate for each other. And as a result, unfortunately, we found out that it seemed that the words seemed then kind of hollow about empowering airmen. And I bring this up, the Gallup's Q12, because I love their take on this. Gallup organization, the polling organization, is basically, if you looked up the Q12, you'll find that there are 12 questions that are statistically relevant, the most statistically relevant, in determining whether employees are satisfied, happy, engaged in their job. And I'm not going to repeat them all here, but I'll just say that all of them are about respect for people. And it really boils down to, if you're as a mid-level manager or senior manager and you're trying to assess how satisfied your workforce is, how engaged they are, it's worth reflecting on one double-edged question. And that's, do the employees believe that the work they do is of value to the organization and valued by the organization? Right? So back to that TQM lesson, we saw people who were doing work that was clearly valued by the organization, or was it? It wasn't necessarily perceived that way. So even though it was valuable work, it wasn't perceived that way because we had this fundamental communications disconnect. And so the rest of this presentation, I want to start talking about the systems that we started building and putting in place towards helping overcome that communications gap. So, excuse me just a second. So one of the things that many of you are familiar with is PDCA or DMAIC or any of the OODA loop that the Air Force used, observe, orient, define, act, decide, and act. And if you look at that little graphic there, you'll see that this is Air Force improvement and innovation, right? Plan, do, check, act. They're all in the little observers there. And I'll explain what those quadrants are as we go through this presentation build. But ultimately, we wanted to establish a framework for thinking about problems. And I will just say that right at the very start, and this is a key and important thing, this framework is relevant at the very tactical 100-foot level where airmen are actually doing the work, or at the Gemba, as the Toyota production system folks and lean students will appreciate. But it's also really valid at the strategic level, where you're thinking and managing a 685,000 person organization. So the same thinking construct, this is about problem solving, right? A lot of people get confused and lost in the terms, but I'm about continuous process improvement, or I'm about innovation, and those are not the same thing. And I'll say, well, let me just take a different spin to that. I think they are the same thing because they're both about problem solving. Or if some people I found break lock on the word problem, so I offer, let's go solve the puzzles, right? And let's build this investigative journalist type thing, type of a belief set when we go into solving puzzles or problems. And as we build this out, you'll see kind of how we walk people through this. And I'll come back to that outer ring here in just a little bit. So the first thing, and all of you probably know this already, essentially is to clarify and validate the problem. And I'm not going to dive into the tools for each one of these things, but you know the tools that are essential at each of these steps. And I want to pause on this one really quickly to say that I can actually, through my experience, which is probably similar to many of yours, can validate with 100% certainty that this one, framing the right problem statement, is one of the hardest things to do in this entire setup, right? I will tell you that we had a cultural issue where I had a team one time that I came across whose culture was they weren't allowed to use the word no or any derivation thereof it. So instead of a simple problem statement like our maintenance processes cannot produce equipment availability at the rates that our operators need to do the work, to do the practice, to be proficient. But that had too many no's or implications of the word no in it. So we spent 3 months going over that problem statement, and ultimately it came out to this unit appreciates the opportunity to improve upon its already robust capabilities for maintenance and making equipment operationally available to the operators. And I'm like, wow, what an incredible lack of value it has in that, because there was this negative association, this avoidance to allergy to the word no. And I thought that was pretty insightful for me. So what it boils down to is clarity of communication is key, right? If you can't say the word no, or you can't say we don't meet, or we can't meet, or we're unable, those types of things, you're really going to confuse the communication to people because they won't necessarily understand what the issue is that we're trying to solve. So I can't underscore or foot stomp enough that having a clear and validated problem statement is absolutely the most critical piece of the problem solving model from my perspective. So the next piece of this, break down the problem, identify the performance gaps. One of the other things that we've had to overcome was another cultural failure where I believe, I use the term data snooping. I think that's incorrect, but effectively, people know intuitively what they think they want to go do. And so what they tend to do is find the data that supports their preferred path forward to an outcome or to change. And that one I actually kind of indict a little bit because and it's not just me. I've heard a former chief of staff of the Air Force say, look, when you come to me for a decision, you tell me what the problem is, and then you show me all the data, not just the data that supports your preferred position, right? So with that statement, the lead general officer in the entire Air Force was saying, don't do what you usually do because that leads us down the wrong path, right? I want to understand all the data. And why is that important? Context. Because anything without context, you can make a case for just about any action, whether or not it's the right action or the right level of action or the right prioritization. Do I do this now or do I do it later? That's all stripped away. All of the key elements of that are stripped away if you don't have the right context. So bring in the problem pieces. The next thing, set your improvement, where you're trying to be. What does tomorrow look like, right? So now I can start understanding the gap between where I am today in capability and where I need to be or can be tomorrow. And then that's pretty easy. Let me back up just one to say, if you look there in the middle, I have the word be smart. So I know many of you are familiar with the techniques on the SMART criteria. The Air Force added the letter B in front of that for be smart. It's proactive, but more importantly, B stands for balanced, right? So everybody's got the SMART criteria goals, but the Air Force uses this word balanced in there. And I want to spend just a quick second to explain why we felt that was necessary. First, we found there were many instances of business unit managers robbing Peter to pay Paul, if you will. So they would take funds from an oversourced or healthy program and move them to an undersourced program, and just so that the problem didn't escalate, so that they could manage it within. But what happened was then, by taking the one that was healthily sourced out of balance, then it decayed a little bit too. At the risk of not finding root cause, they ended up bleeding out of the one account to the other account, and then both accounts degraded. So when we say balanced, we need to make sure that we're thinking about it in a holistic way. And I won't say that that's the wrong decision to make, but there's more to the story when you think about that big complex picture from a global output perspective. Balance has to be a part of the leader's decision-making set, because it could be the right decision to do as long as we're not outpacing the capability that one program was already providing. So I offer that for your consideration. The next piece is, of course, your cause analysis. Why is the data the way it is? Why are the data the way they are? Why? Because fundamentally, and this is new in our new electronic age, data are. They exist whether we want them to or not. And so our question as investigative journalists and reporters is to figure out why they are that way, right? So we do our cause analysis, and then we start developing a strategy. And this is where I find that we kind of separate the notion of improvement and innovations. People start thinking, well, it's continuous process improvement. You're kind of in this incremental journey, whereas innovation, we're clean sheeting it. We're throwing out the old and we're going to go do something completely new. And for that, I just got to say, okay, that's awesome. There's nothing in this that limits your ability to think big. But I also want you to go back to step 3 and say, what's your goal? Where are you trying to get? Because that goal was set in balance with the other stuff. So to completely obliterate something just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. And I got to tell you, that's a hard conversation for creative people. And speaking of creative people, you'll notice that there are some different character types around the edges of the screen, and I'll get back to them in just a few minutes. So once you develop your plan, you have that resourcing approval toll gate, and the boss says, yeah, go do that. Then you go do it. And these things, the implementation plans, they range from just do it, why are we still talking, to maybe I need a rapid improvement event and I want to put it in place. I want to see if it works. I test it. Okay, I got it. Now that's the new way of doing it. Some of them may be full-scale projects that may span weeks, months, years, or I've actually even seen one span decades. And I know the project management guys would go, no, that's really, really bad. You need to break it down. I got it. But at the big picture, 50,000 foot level, some of these things take a lot longer to get to the actual, we're done and we've delivered the effect we need. So don't beat me up for that. But let's just say that there's a range of actions and implementation to get from where we want to do once we've got approval to do it and doing it. Then the next thing is we have to check to see whatever we did, if it worked. And if it didn't, we have to kind of go back through there and figure out where we went wrong. If it did, then we're good to go on, and we're going to standardize everything that was successful about it, and we'll move forward in a healthy way. That spiral of improvement and innovation. So what am I talking about here with all of these guys? right? So I want to throw out a shout out to Dr. Jeff DeGraff, whose book, The Innovation Code, really is key to understanding what these characters in the corners mean. So these characters in the corners, there you'll see up in the upper right, there's competitive, and then lower right is creative, lower lower left is collaborative, and upper right is controlling. So I want you to think about just for a second the types of people and personalities that are out there. You have some folks in your organization that are super creative and they can look at anything and go, yeah, I'm good. Let's go do, we need to do this and that and the other thing. And who keeps them in check? It's the folks in the upper left of the screen, the controlling people. They're like, no, no, no. We have regulation, we have policy that says you can't do that, right? So they're trying to keep them down. And what's important to realize, according to Dr. DeGraff, is that these folks are in dynamic tension with each other, creative people and controlling people. And then two other personalities that we kind of have to consider are competitive people and collaborative people. Competitive people, I got to get there now. Type A, Uber type A to an extreme. We got to get there now. We got to win. We got to make profit at all costs. Collaborative people, can we just slow down, take a beat, and let's listen to everybody's opinion. Let's make sure that we're going and getting things correct, right? So those folks are in dynamic tension with each other. And it's the dynamic tension that each one of those personality types kind of brings a different skill, kind of like the Avengers Dr. DeGraff shows. Each Avenger has its own special and unique skills, but together they form a team. And that team is a really powerful team. So I would say that you want to invest in your people enough to know kind of where the personality types are. And I would say that you have to make sure that you get a good balance of these things and you proceed forward with improvement and innovation in a very healthy way. Because look at the energy of this. The reason we did this concentric circles design is because I wanted to show you plan, do, check, act. So of those 8 steps around the outer circle, planning is a significant portion, right? For the OODA loop, that's observing, orienting, and then getting ready to make the decision. And for DMAIC, that's defining, measuring, analyzing, and then you actually go do something. For the innovation tool set, I'm using DDRFSI, discovery, design, relevance, feasibility, sustainability, and impact, right? So those issues, you'll see that that's a little slightly different process when you get the creative folks involved. And if you have people who control and say, no, you must do it this way, the creative folks will kind of break lock because they can appreciate those first 4 steps of the problem-solving model in a different way than the folks who are very strict and rigid in how they approach their methodologies. So I would just say we found success is in embracing and allowing people to do all of it and coming up with teams that consist of all of these character types. The innovation code was key to our unlocking this particular insight. So let's talk a little bit more about innovation. I'm blessed to run a program called Airman Powered by Innovation. And so we've got the buzzword in there. And all that really means is that we have a way for airmen doing that DDRFSI or the PDCA or the OODA loop or DMAIC. We have a way for them to register in a system. We're tracking ideas and we're trying to understand, because our key issue is we have to understand its impact on a global organization. So you can see right now, and I just briefed this last month to leadership, and we had only 58,000 users. So now just in 1 month's time, we have another 7,000 users. And you can see that's a little short of 10% of our force is engaged in submitting ideas or voting on ideas, reviewing what other people are thinking about. We're trying to build that team. We're trying to build that community where airmen can see what issues are out there, and we're trying to understand how we can help build those communities. So the next question that you start thinking about at this program level is, I hear that those airmen are still thinking about the local things, but are we thinking together like an enterprise? And so we have ability to break down what they're thinking of. And I would tell you that a lot of those really are local ideas, but I've put in place a team, our leadership has put a team in place to help us evaluate those for bigger insights, because at the end of the day, the Air Force has always been about change, right? We were born out of change. We were born out of thinking differently from the Army back in 1947. And we've got such a bias for action and doing that we have this issue where we're thinking about, we need a system. Let's go do that. Let's go do this. And we've got a bias to getting to action and to yes. Well, that type of ethic, if you will, or business model is good and healthy, except if you don't have the discipline to talk to each other. right? And so the reason I have this is just a snapshot. For our business mission areas, we have about 400, we have purchased over the last several decades, 450 different systems that only produce 309 unique outcomes. So we don't have a problem with our purchasing issue requirements. We don't necessarily have a problem with our outcomes issues. What we do have a problem with is talking with each other to understand who's doing what in the exact same space. So the real issue for us is we have to overcome this mindset. We've always done it this way. That is a behavioral mindset. And that's why I come back in at the beginning to what we said at the beginning, which is this is really about getting down to changing behaviors. So how do we do that behavioral thing? Well, one of the first things we do is I've got this program. It's about grassroots initiatives. And I have an annual innovation showcase we call the Air Force Spark Tank. And yeah, it's modeled after TV's Shark Tank. In fact, we even had Mark Cuban as a celebrity guest judge a couple of years ago. But in addition to celebrity guest judges, we also have the Secretary of the Air Force, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force as judges for this program. And you can see our levels of engagement there. We have 57 active campaigns right now that help commanders at all those bases worldwide solve the things that they're most caring about. And we have a couple of Air Force-wide or department-wide campaigns that we look at. And you can see that there's been so far 8,500 ideas. I think I have a slide to get to this. They're all over the world. Those ideas come from all over the world. And let me go back to it. Those campaign ideas come from all over the world. So of those 8,500 ideas, there have been 49,000 votes, or excuse me, 72,000 votes cast on those 8,000 ideas, meaning they're supportive of the idea. There have been 18,000 comments, 18,000 plus comments on each of those ideas, or many of the ideas. And that indicates what most of those comments are about. Hey, did you think about this? Or did you think about that? So we're really bringing the communities together so that the folks from all over the world then can come in through our platform and say, hey, I'm working that same issue. And then they can get together and collaborate to getting something that's a little more compelling for leadership to kind of think about and pay attention to. So I put together a lot of various tools. We train people. We've got foundational training. We've got green belt training, black belt, master black belt, et cetera. We have put together a senior leader content program to teach leadership how to demand and draw and to use these programs to the best effect as they solve problems locally, but yet think globally and understand how to communicate those, and we can help facilitate that communication. And then we also are looking at our CPI executive course, where we teach our general officers and senior executive service members how to create demand at the system level to make sure that everything that's going through that pipeline is actually a really healthy thing. And so what we're doing now is we're also bringing in an education and training program that's designed to take all of these concepts and embed them into our technical training programs. Those are the programs where we teach airmen off the street. Once they volunteer and sign the commitment and they become an airman or a space professional, we teach them how to do the job that they're doing. And we're embedding all of the concepts that you would learn in all of these types of classes into the technical training of how to do your job, because we want them to be thinking about improving work, giving them the tools to know how to do it, and facilitate that discussion all through their careers as airmen. Because in doing that, this is my investment in our future capability. At the end of this stream, we'll graduate with senior leaders who have really lived awesome operational excellence techniques and programs, and then be able to demand it and get to it in a better, faster, and healthier way. So where will all this culture change lead us? At the end of the day, I think it's a very calculated study and plan of into getting us to think differently and ultimately to accelerate the pace of change, and in a prioritized way, the things that most affect that global community out towards where we need it to be for best effect, so that the things that you do see and think about when you hear the word Air Force or Space Force, those effects continue to be world leading. So stewardship, innovation, operational excellence. That's our plan. That's our program. What questions can I answer for you?
Brou, as always, a master class on on the organizational excellence and innovation. I love the way you wrap it up with stewardship as foundational, and excellence and innovation as certainly as a follow-up on that. Lots of great questions. I'm going to ask the audience to go into the app and type your questions. We're still monitoring them. Some have already come in, and we're going to look at. I want to address a couple of logistical items before I ask your questions to Brou. And several of you asked about the sessions. In this session, for example, so this session is being recorded, and it will be available to you in the app after this segment is completed. It takes some time to process, and then you should be able to come back to the app and see the session playback at your convenience. So that's one of the key benefits for being a registered participant. The other sessions that are happening in parallel, and if you're afraid you're going to miss something, they'll also be there for you. For whenever you need, you can go there and replay the session for you. This is an awesome feature that we have made available to you, and we are making that available to you for a full year. So you're going to have access to all of this material for the next 12 months. So thank you for being part of the BTOES from home with us, and that's just one of the many benefits you're going to get from that. Now, since that was a big question, a lot of people's minds, and they brought it up, I would highlight that. Now I want to go back to Brou's presentation. Brou, Steve Wozak, who woke up super early in California to ask to be here and participate in the session. Steve is a leader who is also presenting in the conference, and he asks, he says, enjoying the presentation very much. For the value of excellence in all we do, what is done to make sure that everyone understands what this means and what behaviors this should inspire?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. And thanks for getting up early. So ultimately, that's where I'm going with the discussion points about embedding the concepts of continuous improvement and innovation in our technical training. So we're taking, we kind of use a 3-level apprentice, 5-level journeyman, 7-level craftsman, 9-level master craftsman approach to our workforce. And we want embedded in there 3 levels to be thinking about how to, number one, outcome, how do you improve the way you do your job? In fact, we're trying to get our HR system set up so that is a criteria for awarding promotion to the next level of grades or ranks. The second thing then, after you've got a setup on how to improve how you do things, is then to talk about improving doing the actual job, right? So right now, I would say our culture is about doing the work itself. Come in, do the work, and go home. Be done with your shift. But we're moving to a piece where we're embedding it in, and we're changing the focus so that the number one outcome is improving how you get your job done. And then the second outcome would then be to do it. And the key to that absolutely is teaching people from day one in their technical training programs how those tools that can help them understand what the different types of waste are. And so that they can become sensors for us, 685,000 sensors of where stupid is, right? I need to be able to identify where stupid is 10 times out of 10. I need every airman to be able to see it, understand it, and call it out and be able to do something about it. And I want them to use a partnership with their supervisors on how to get rid of it, because no one likes to do that the stupid thing, right? Waiting time, waiting waste, motion waste, transportation waste, etc., because they're trying to add value to their job. And so as we head back on the second edge of that coin about, do you show that you value the work that they do? It's about showing them that we value their time. So by putting this program in through their technical training, that's where we're really trying to get after that behavioral change. And I hope that answered your question, Steve.
Yeah, well said. That's a great note on shifting the mindset from doing work to improve the way we work. That's a higher bar that makes puts perspective on what we do. Now, the next question here comes from Akil Motiwala, and he's asking about the common culture in such a diverse workforce and organization. So, the corollary from Drucker's culture eats strategy for breakfast. Improvement and innovation are just side dishes. And so the question is, the Air Force is not one thing. The Air Force, 640,000 plus professionals there, as you said, and you have an overarching culture, but you also have lots of subcultures. So when you're thinking about transforming a culture, how do you manage across such diversity?
That is a great question, and I think the Air Force actually and Space Force actually has a little bit of an advantage over traditional civilian public companies, because at the end of the day, most 85,000 people put on the same uniform, right? And so that under that uniform, we have our name tag on one side, and we have United States Air Force or U.S. Space Force on the other side, and that belonging, that sense of commitment to the organization itself, that sense of identity actually helps us overcome that key barrier. Because you're right, that's absolutely a critical barrier. Our civilian workforce is kind of mixed. Some of us are retirees. Others have not ever been a retiree, but they've been career civil service. But they're just as bought into the future that they need to deliver for our Air Force as the men and women who wear the uniform day in and day out. So I would say the clothes we wear is the biggest part of that. The second part of that is we define on our operational outcomes. So you saw the launching airplanes, launching rockets, putting a satellite into orbit, doing our day-to-day job for the people, the taxpayers of the United States. That is another unifying principle where we bring to point our airmen can focus on the service that they deliver for the good of the nation. That's very helpful for us, and it may be maybe, if you will, a competitive advantage over what a commercial organization has to face.
For sure. That's excellent. Brou, how do you manage all the ideas that are coming in as part, especially of the innovation piece that you talk in the end? You have lots of ideas. I saw thousands of ideas in there. What is the process that you're using to go from the ideation, if you will, to decide on the alignment of the strategies, to decide on what you're going to work on?
Right. So that is a great question. And I would say I don't want to get into the details of our funnel or the technology behind it, but we do have a platform that we use that allows us to kind of have a catcher's mitt or funnel, all the ideas ingest. And I actually have a small team of people whose job it is to review every single one of those ideas. And so on order week, we're getting, it was a 2.5 year snapshot essentially. So we're getting about 100 to 150 ideas each month. And so it's not an insurmountable work task to do that, but they're reviewing for a couple of things. First, they're reviewing, is this something that's actually come up before? Because our model actually rewards airmen who take and invest their time and energy into solving the problem. We call them intrapreneurs. So not entrepreneurs, but intrapreneurs, because they're in the mix, they're in the job, and they need to do and own the work. So with that, we're rewarding them because we want them to have skin in the game. And we're evaluating how rich their proposal is, right? In terms of, is it ready for it to be presented to a general officer? And if it's not, we assign a local pitch coach to them at their base, whose sole purpose is to help them understand and really codify that problem-solving model. What's the problem you're solving? Help me understand the data. What does your solution bring to the table? All right, now let's go sell that. And they turn it into a commercial pitch, typically 3 minutes or less, on how to solve that problem. And we turn them loose to the commanders at their local level who make decisions and have some investment money set aside to go see if there's some there. Because quite honestly, in the innovation space, there's just as many dogs as there are creative and wonderful ideas that are really game changers. So we have to see if there's some there that get that validation. And once we do that, then we have a way of escalating it through their chain of command so that they get credit for being the entrepreneur who is potentially changing the way their career field does their job. And it's a little investment. I would say I probably have about 100 people across the Air Force and Space Force who are kind of dedicated to that job. Everybody else is doing it as kind of an additional aspect of or requirement of their day job.
That's fantastic. That's truly world class, and the incredible insights that you're sharing with us from how the best really around the world do this, and that's terrific. I have time for one final quick question here. I know there's certainly value that's measured, and success that's measured in financial sense, in the financial sense, in value creation, in terms of better efficiencies and perhaps saving money in part of this process. But I have to imagine that there's as many or more hard to measure intangibles that the Air Force values. And I'm curious about that. What's beyond dollars? How you're measuring success for the program at the Air Force?
So, it's one of the interesting things, and I think I have to draw a little further out so you can see a comparison with the other services. If you look at the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Space Force, the Air Force and Space Force are a little different. For Marines, people enlist and then they come out usually after their first enlistment. In fact, you're invited to stay, and they have a different retention model than the other services do. Army, a little more similar to that. Navy, a little longer tenure in terms of retention. The Air Force has the highest retention from accession into the service to retirement than any of the other services. And that's only about 15% of our folks. So 15% of our folks come in on day one and stay till they're retirement eligible. The rest come in, they learn what they need to learn, they get the skills they need to do, and then they go out to be productive members of society. So I would say that the retention piece of that is one of the ways that we assess the intangibles, because we don't necessarily have to offer bonuses, because people tell us time and again, it's not about the money. It's about whether or not they believe the work they do is of value to the organization and valued by the organization. Compensation is certainly a part of that, but trusting people to be professionals and to set the groundwork for a future that is better working environment and produces better, more consistent, more capacity in terms of their results and their service outcomes, that's what rewards people. And that's where I think we're finding a lot of success with this program. That's a great question.
That's fantastic. Brou Gautier, it's always a masterclass from a leader who has been doing this consistently at an incredible high level of excellence for so many years. And thank you for taking the time to sharing that experience with us. Thanks for your service. Thanks for your leadership in this incredible journey of excellence and innovation that you're leading for the Air Force.
Jose, thank you again for being an incredibly gracious host. And to all of you, I hope I provided something of value to you, at least to think about, little brain candy to fuel the rest of your week. And this, I hope the rest of this BTOES World Summit experience is for you as learning and enjoyable and personal, filled with personal growth opportunities, as it always is for me. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Brou Gautier, incredible leader of excellence innovation at the Air Force, is sharing best practices for sure in an incredibly large transformation and ecosystem. So terrific. Now we're going to have a break here on the main stage, but remember, sessions happening everywhere. Make sure that you check out what's going on in the tracks. Make sure the Women in OpEx forum is happening today as well, and I have to highlight that session may be actually sold out and full, but worth checking it out. Visit the virtual booth and be eligible for giveaways and the $1,000 prize. And then at 10:45 Eastern US time, we're gonna meet back here with a keynote panel on the future of work. So joining me, we're going to have Anu George from Morningstar, Yuval Dever from Google, and Dassalan Wood on the Thought Exchange, and you do not want to miss that session. So I'll see you back here at the main stage at 10:45 a.m. Eastern Time.